the homers of 1961, today on Sunday Baseball. Today on Sunday Baseball, we're going to have a simple hitters episode, and it's going to be about the home runs of 1961. Why 1961? I'll tell you. But first, click the subscribe button to get Sunday Baseball each and every Sunday. 1961, what a year!
What a year!
Kennedy was inaugurated.
The Beatles played the cavern for the first time.
Hassan II became the King of Morocco. See, from 1901 to 1960, there were 16 major league teams, 8 teams in each league, National League and American League. That's just the way it was. But the country was changing post-war demographically, and there were a lot of new population centers that were hungry for Major League Baseball. So in the 1950s, you had a big wave of teams moving from one city to another, which hadn't happened since the beginning of the century. You had the Dodgers moving from Brooklyn to Los Angeles. The Giants moved from Manhattan to San Francisco. The Browns moved from St. Louis and became the Baltimore Orioles. The A's moved from Philadelphia to Kansas City, and the Braves moved from Boston to Milwaukee. But there were still 16 major league teams, 8 in the National League and 8 in the American League, until 1961 in the American League. In 1961, the American League expanded by adding 2 more teams. Now, the Washington Senators moved to Minnesota and became the Minnesota Twins, and a brand new Washington Senators was created in Washington. And also, the Los Angeles Angels were created, who I will always still call the California Angels, no matter how many times they change their name. This was the first expansion year since 1901, so no one really knew what was going to happen. But the effects could be kind of semi-predicted. I mean, since there were a whole bunch of extra new players in the league, you could see that there was going to be at least some talent dilution, and the effects were most pronounced among the power hitters. Now, when you think of 1961, the first thing you think of is the M&M boys, Maris and Mantle. Roger Maris broke Babe Ruth's 34-year-old record and hit 61 homers in 1961. Now, here's the thing. Since Roger Maris was just a young slugger who hit 269, and Babe Ruth was the biggest American icon since Babe Ruth, Commissioner Ford Frick decided that if Maris didn't top 60 home runs in 154 games, which was the length of Ruth's schedule, and in 162 games, which was the brand new schedule, then Maris would get an asterisk next to his name in the rule book, and that is what happened. However, since Maris hit number 61 on the last day of the 162 game schedule, he did hit number 60 in fewer plate appearances than Ruth. Roger Maris was not Babe Ruth, and it was an expansion year, but Maris did win the MVP and a Gold Glove the year before in 1960, so he was a legitimate star slugger. And I think it's unfair the way he was often dismissed or even abused by people when he was chasing the record, to the point where in September of 1961 his hair actually began falling out.
He pulled his hair!
Ruth's record was so iconic that it seems very unlikely that a mere mortal star like Roger Maris could break it. But in the 52 years since Maris broke the record, the only 3 people that have topped Maris's mark have all used performance-enhancing drugs. So, kudos to Roger Maris.
Kudos to Roger Maris.
For most of the season, Maris was locked in a battle with teammate Mickey Mantle for the home run record, but Mantle missed a few games in September and had to settle with 54 for the season. Now, with these guys playing on their team, it's no wonder that the Yankees hit what was a team record 240 home runs that year, which was a record that stood until the chemical age. The Yankees that year had 6 guys who hit 20-plus home runs, which was not topped until the 1996 Baltimore Orioles, who definitely had no guys at all playing on steroids.
Not a me, that's not, say no more.
Catcher Ellie Howard, former greatest catcher ever in 1961 left fielder Yogi Berra, Moose Skowron, and secret weapon pinch hitter and pinch catcher Johnny Blanchard, who hit 21 home runs in only 243 at-bats. It's no wonder with offense like that the Yankees won 109 games that year and stomped on the Reds in the World Series. But the slugger class was not just limited to New York. Over in Baltimore, Jim Gentile was hitting 46 homers, and over in Minnesota, Harmon Killebrew was also hitting 46 homers. Now here's the thing, Killebrew hit 288 that year, 1961, right? But 2 years earlier, in 1959, Harmon Killebrew had become the first person ever to hit more than 40 homers on less than a 250 average.
A trend that has alarmingly continued.
Meanwhile, in Detroit, you're not gonna say it?
Say what?
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Ty.
Ty who?
Tigers rule.
Go Tigers!
Seriously, Swedish Knock Knock Girl?
Well, there's only Vikings in football. Who else am I going to root for?
Probably not the Indians.
Yeah, but you guys have a king. What about the Royals?
Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Cobb.
Cobb who?
Complicated humor like this never works.
Complicated?
I'm gonna start using that.
I'm not surprised. In Detroit, there were 2 sluggers who both topped 40 home runs in 1961, giving the AL a total of 6 players with more than 40 home runs that season. And this was a mark that would not be topped until a few years in the late 1990s when absolutely no one was using performance-enhancing drugs.
Look, are you insinuating something?
Oh, yes.
Rocky Colavito hit 45 for the Tigers that year, while Norm Cash cruised in at 41. Cash also won the AL batting title that year by hitting .361, which was not only 75 points higher than he hit any other season in his career, but it was also the highest average in the AL until Rod Carew topped it in 1974. And, funny thing, except for Carew, Mickey Mantle, and Ted Williams, right? It was the highest average in the AL total between 1940 and 1980.
40 years.
Cash later admitted that he had used corked bats during the 1961 season, drilling holes in his bats and filling them with a mixture of sawdust, sand, and glue.
He cheated?
I don't know, Larry. Did he? All of those Homer records from 1961 were topped by people that used illegal drugs to improve their performance. But was what Cash did himself any better or any worse than what they did? Funny, isn't it, that a corked bat or a spitball seems somehow charming today, but taking steroids seems disgusting and evil? There's a double standard in there somewhere, I'm sure, but I just don't know where it is. That's all for today. We'll see you next week with more Sunday Baseball. For more Sunday Baseball, like us on Facebook, and I'll post all kinds of cool and amazing stuff once or twice a week. Or more. It could happen every day. I'm crazy like that.